Welcome into the Your Illini Nation pregame show as we get you set for Illinois basketball to take on Michigan State here at the State Farm Center. Illinois looking to avoid their third straight loss. Andy Olson, along with Illini Inquirer's Derek Piper. Derek, good to have you back on the sidelines with us.
Back, man.
It is going to be such an interesting game here tonight. There are so many storylines going into this one. It's been tough sledding for Illinois against Michigan State here recently after getting that win in Iowa's freshman year all the way back in 2019. It was almost a program-changing win for Brad Underwood. We'll go into the rivalry, the recent series between these two teams, but the biggest thing that we got to start with is Kofi Coburn's status. He's been out since last week, missed the Maryland game in concussion protocols after taking a shot during practice, had that aggravated against Purdue. He still played in that game, of course, but Derek, we don't know a ton right now, just that he was still in the protocols yesterday, and Brad didn't have an answer for us whether or not he was going to play at that point.
Yeah, we're on Kobe watch.
Yes.
This has been happening way too much for this program this year. We're turning our backs and trying to figure out who's playing and whatnot. I know Brad is frustrated by it and trying to work their way through, and obviously, as you saw against Maryland, his presence when he's not out there is a big difference when you look at Maryland scoring 40-plus points in the paint and Illinois not having the rebounding prowess that they normally have, getting beat on the glass. And you look at the Michigan State squad that you know each and every year is going to be a very physical team, very good rebounding team. So hard to really know because each guy is different in terms of how they handle concussions. We know that Curbelo missed 2 months, and he came back after the initial concussion, had post-concussion syndrome and the symptoms that he was feeling. So it's all about how Kofi is able to get out of protocol and pass those tests. And I even think back to last year with Io. I know Io wanted to play at Michigan, coming off of the hit against Michigan State, which I know that a lot of fans are going to remember, especially if they see Matty Sissoko out here tonight. So you just never know. It's up to the doctors, it's up to passing the test, up to how the player feels. So it's really a hard one to judge, and certainly one when you look at Illinois coming off back-to-back losses. A game, if they win, they're back in first place in the Big Ten. And a team that could really use a signature win, his status is very, very important.
Yeah, and you could argue the best win for Illinois so far this year is probably at Iowa, I would say. And, that's not necessarily a signature win at this point, as Iowa hasn't shown to be very good. They're about a middle-of-the-pack Big Ten team, I would say. But I think you're right on. The signature win, if you'd want this one to be your signature win tonight, that'd be a huge one to get over Michigan State. And the Kofi stuff, it's so hard to tell because it's not like it's any kind of other injury where you get a timeline and you know, like after 2 weeks or something like that, he's going to be back. I mean, for Andre Curbelo, it took almost 2 months for him to come back from his concussion. So it's always so different for each person. We're going to stay on Kofi watch. I can tell you that he has not been out here yet. We've seen the other centers, Benjamin Bosman's for Donk, Brandon Lieb, Omar Payne all out here shooting from the baseline as we speak at the moment. No Kofi Coburn signing yet, but we're going to keep turning our backs and checking it out just in case. So, all right, let's break down this matchup and what it could mean for Illinois moving forward. With Michigan State, Brad Underwood brought up that they got a lot of those same guys that beat him last year in East Lansing. And even though it was a 9-point game, Brad told us yesterday he didn't think it was as close as that 9-point deficit made it seem in East Lansing.
No, it wasn't, and there's some of the same keys that Michigan State used in that game that you would look at this matchup and say you got to be able to handle those better. And one is just Michigan State loves to play in transition. They're an up-tempo team. They scored 20-plus fast break points against Illinois last year. They're coming off a game in which they dominated Wisconsin, going up and down. And really, Illinois has struggled with their transition defense, and we saw that a little bit against Maryland. And they got quick guards. They've got athletic wings. They got mobile bigs. You can go up and down. And Marcus Bingham is a center that can rim run really well. He's going to try to beat, whether it's Kofi or Omar Payne or whoever the matchup is, he's going to try to beat his man down the floor, try to get easy baskets. Gabe Brown is back as a wing that can shoot the three, and he's their leading scorer throughout this season. Has struggled a little bit with his jumper. He's had a little bit of a lull, but overall, I think he's shooting 43% on the year. A lefty that can stroke it from deep, can also, you got to check him in transition, because if he has a lane to the basket, it's going to be on SportsCenter, top 10 plays. I mean, he's a really good athlete, very long. And one new addition for them, Max Christie, is their freshman, Illinois native, 6'6", was a 5-star wing, playing really well for them now. He was a little inconsistent early on in the year, which of course is kind of typical for a freshman, but here over the last 5 games, he's averaged 14 points a game, and he shot 67% from three. He's made 2/3 of his threes in the last 5 games.
That's pretty good.
Do not give him any open space. Silky smooth jumper. He can really hurt you.
One of the main reasons I want to see Kofi tonight is that Coburn-Bingham matchup inside if he does play. I know that Kofi kind of struggled with that last year. He only scored 13 points in East Lansing, but it's a new year, new Kofi. We saw it earlier this year that he's got really a completely different game. He can dish it out. I'm just wondering what that matchup would be like tonight if he does play, because, man, that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it would be a great matchup. And you look at Kofi this year, and it's hard to knock the season that he's had. I know that, honestly, in his Illinois' two biggest tests so far this year, look at Arizona and look at Purdue, Kofi did not play up to his potential. He struggled in those games against some legit size. So you look at this as a matchup where Bingham is one of the top shot blockers in the Big Ten. He doesn't have the type of physical strength to bang with Kofi, but he has the length and the quick twitch athleticism to really challenge some shots. And that would be a tough challenge for Kofi to be able to score over him. And really last year, Michigan State, even having a lot of length on him, number one, they were really physical with him. They sent him to the free throw line a lot. I know Illini fans are going to say there were a lot of times where they fouled him and it didn't get called. That is probably a fair case. I mean, that's something, that is life of Kofi Coburn. He's got to be able to handle that. But also, as I mentioned, Bingham being able to go up and down the floor, play fast-paced, rim run. He's shown an occasional ability to hit a jump shot. I wouldn't worry too much about that. But also, look at the glass. Like, Bingham can rebound really well. Obviously, Kofi is a big key to Illinois hitting the offensive glass, getting second chance opportunities, and really just getting easy baskets. So that would be a great battle. And the thing about Michigan State is they have a nice rotation of bigs to where if one gets a couple of fouls, they can throw another one at you. They're not too worried about playing physical down low.
We saw on Friday, Benjamin Bosmans-Verdonk got the start at center with Kofi Coburn out. So quickly, one more thing on that matchup. If it's not Coburn tonight, which center do you think Illinois goes with in place of Kofi?
I think you continue with Bosmans-Verdonk. I think that he is still the better option. He played 25 minutes against Maryland. He only had one rebound. He spoke to us yesterday about how he knows that can't happen. When he's on the floor, he's got to be able to hit the glass, especially in this kind of a matchup. Omar Payne was not very good defensively against Maryland, and that was a kind of a weak spot where he's chasing a lot of blocks. He ended up leaving his guy, which allowed for a lot of second chance putback dunks, which Wahab took advantage of, and obviously Bingham would do the same if Payne would do something similar. So if Kofi's out, you got to rely on both guys. You're not going to get through 30-plus minutes with BBV, and really you need a lot better from both of them than what you just saw on Friday.
All right, one more thing on that matchup on Friday. I mean, you may not think about shooting the three as something that Kofi is really involved in, but if you dig deep, having that presence inside has opened up so many shots for Illinois this season, and it showed that they can't hit the three as easily when Kofi's not in. They went 11 for 35 against Maryland. If it's not Kofi tonight, how would you see Illinois going about trying to get more open shots? Because they struggled with that clearly without him on Friday.
Yeah, I think they'll need more guard penetration. I think they'll need to move the ball better and be able to break down the defense, drive and kick, because I don't think it's a situation where you're going to throw it into Bosmans-Verdonk, you're going to throw it into Omar Payne. Bosman's had a hard time, finishing against legit size, and this would be one where Michigan State's fourth in the nation in block shots. So, they are really, really good at making it tough around the paint. And this is really, to that point, if Kofi's not in, you got to really light it up from three. I think that's your only way of being able to keep pace offensively. But to your point about, you look at their length. You look at Gabe Brown is 6'6", Christie, same thing. Malik Hall is 6'8", Joey Hauser 6'9". When you have a lot of length like that, it's tough for shooters to get their shot off, and Illinois has some shorter guys in that backcourt. You think of Plummer, you think of Frazier, but you need to be able to have guys get in, kick it out, and really make Michigan State rotate and move defensively. If it's just a static, easy one-passing shot, they're going to be there to put a hand up. So I think that would be something I'd really look for.
And speaking of guards who get to the basket well, Andre Curbelo, who was only in his second game back on Friday, didn't have the best game, but we learned after the game that he had a fever going into that one. It wasn't COVID. He was still able to play. He still tried to play, but clearly not at his best. Didn't see action in the first 10 minutes of the second half, because at that point, Brad Underwood said he realized, I can't put this kid back out there, and only his second game back, and he's struggling through this fever. So another thing for Illini fans have to worry about going into this game, about one of their best players being available.
Yeah, and a guy that Brad mentioned didn't practice. What would that have been, Monday?
Yeah.
Or yesterday didn't practice Sunday. Sure. I don't know about his status yesterday, but another guy we have yet to see out here on this court. So I would wonder about him tonight as well. And really just such a stark contrast to performances when you look at Purdue and how sensational he was, particularly down the stretch, ability to break down the defense, get to the rim. And then against Maryland, I think that he took some tough shots. He took a really deep three. He got in the lane. He does trend towards the high degree of difficulty. That's his game, obviously. I just think that he maybe looked for his own a little bit too much against Maryland. Again, I understand he wasn't feeling very good and had some turnovers. If he is on the court tonight, you are looking for him to break down the D. And I think try to get other teammates involved. You want him to still be able to score, but keep that offense flowing. Try to make it a collective thing of getting going just versus a guy saying, okay, I'm going to go in and try to get mine.
What do you make of that slow start against Maryland? Because that was the first thing in the post-game press conference that Brian Underwood was telling us reporters that were there, that he was extremely disappointed how slow they came out of the gates. It didn't seem like they had any energy. Now they kept up with the Terps, and it was a really close game. Looks like a very winnable game for Illinois into those final 6 minutes where things just kind of didn't go their way. They weren't getting anything going on offense and taking bad shots, but that particularly that beginning of the game was what Brad pointed out the most. He said it's been fixed. He says that he had a talk with them, and I imagine there was a lot of yelling in that talk. That's not really Brad Underwood basketball, to play without energy. How much of that had to do with Kofi not playing, and do you think that's going to be a concern today?
I think it did clearly have quite a bit to do with Kofi. I think Kofi makes up for a lot of errors or ills or whatever you want to call it. When a guy in the second half against Maryland, when you're playing on this floor, had 16 points and 15 rebounds. Yeah. So in terms of the glass, and you think about Maryland getting some second chance opportunities and everything like that, and Wahab to be able to have one of his better games in the last month or so, that's a product of Kofi not being on the floor. But now also, you got to look at some of your other veterans. You still had Trent Frazier, you still had Demonte Williams, you still had Grandison on down the line, and you just didn't have that defensive intensity. Now Plummer was able to keep you in the game by just going on a heater for three, but it was Maryland scoring far too easily, being able to get going with their guards. Fats Russell got in the lane all night. And one thing that I don't know that you can really fix, I don't think Illinois handled all that great, Dante Scott was a matchup problem at the 4. Back down Demonte, was able to handle Coleman Hawkins. And Illinois didn't have an answer for that, nor did they try to really guard him any differently. Now, to that point, maybe looking towards this game, Malik Hall's a matchup problem at the 4 as well for Michigan State. So I'd be curious, and he played one of his better games here of late against Wisconsin. I think he had 14 points and 8 rebounds. Do they guard him differently? Can they get a little bit more out of defending the 4? I think that's going to be key tonight.
One of the guys that I see out here right now that I want to talk about as well, Coleman Hawkins, had a pretty good game against Maryland. I mean, he was able to hit some shots. We've seen him kind of get out of that rut at least a little bit, but he hasn't gotten back to that form that we saw specifically against Rutgers when he was able to shut down Ron Harper Jr. And you bring up Hall as being a matchup problem. Hawkins, who we've seen do that against Rutgers, bag just scared me over there. I thought the camera was going down. Hawkins, who had that great game against Rutgers, I mean, that's the kind of guy who you want to step up tonight and get back to that form, because that would be a perfect defender for a guy like that.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at the length and the mobility, an energy guy when he's playing engaged and giving you what you want. So I think that in terms of rebounding, we know that right off the COVID pause, Coleman Hawkins had 3 straight games of 8 rebounds in each game. So I think that is something that you're looking at there in terms of keeping Michigan State off the offensive glass, and then contesting a guy like Malik Hall, who wants to post up smaller defenders in the mid-post. Now Hawkins would have him in terms of a little bit more height, but being able to contest those shots, being able to make sure he doesn't get second chance points. And yeah, Coleman, turnovers are still an issue. Like that is one thing that you look at. And really, I was looking at KenPom, and of the 88, 89 qualifying players in the Big Ten, Coleman has the highest turnover rate in the Big Ten. So that's something that he has to be able to handle and make smarter decisions. And three-point shooting, we still haven't seen what I expected from him. Like as a prospect, he was a pretty darn good shooter. Consistency-wise, he's not been there yet. He did make 1 3. If he can stretch that floor a little bit more, that would really help to open up the lane, especially if Kofi's playing, or for driving lanes for Frazier and Curbelo as well.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to get back up to those forms. Consistency was the big word that I took from what you said right there, because the past 2 games have been anything but consistent. That Purdue game, Illinois looks so good that they're able to compete at that same level as the Boilermakers, a top 5 team in the country. They end up losing to Indiana then in the game after that, which makes you feel a little bit worse. But then they go out and lay that egg against Maryland, and like I already said, those final 6 minutes where there was no consistency on offense for the Illini. Trent Frazier throwing up shots was specifically something Brad Underwood had brought up. Step back threes, down 3 kind of thing, like not running any sets. Does that concern you? Because those are the last 6 minutes that we've seen Illinois play out there. Or are you going to chalk it up to just being an unique, odd game like Brad Underwood kind of has to us in the media?
No, I think you do have to take something away, especially now that we've gone all this time and still haven't seen the big fella out there. So
Absolutely.
obviously your offense is still going to have to deal with that problem. So as the threes dried up late in that game, you were really stagnant. You couldn't answer anything. Trent had a nice little run to start the second half. Obviously, Plummer for the first 20, 21 minutes of that game. So you got to be able to have an answer. You got to have some other guys be able to step up and make shots. Demonte Williams has kind of been in a little bit of a rut from three. That's something you want to see him get out of. We've talked about Coleman Hawkins, but to a point that we were talking about earlier, I think it's guards getting into the lane and being able to force that collapse in the middle that you would get out of Kofi if he's in there. You got to kind of force that rotation, because if they don't respect, which they shouldn't be too worried about Boss Man or Omar scoring inside, you got to maybe run some pick and rolls. You got to make that defense move to be able to open up shots from three. I think in general, you're not going to freak out too much, because there's going to be ebbs and flows within the season. Brad mentioned yesterday that, hey, last year we lost to Maryland, then we lost to Ohio State, then we went on a big time run. But holding serve at home is really important. I know all these top teams have now taken a loss at home. Illinois lost to Purdue, Wisconsin lost to Michigan State, Michigan State lost to Northwestern. So you kind of have these moments, but being able to stop a losing streak, being able to get back on the right page is going to be really important. And I think as we look at the home games, knowing in February you're going on the road to some really tough places, you're going to want this one.
First official game with the Orange Crush back in here. There was a good amount of them here for the Purdue game, and now students are back in classes. We see some filing in already, so that should bring a good atmosphere here. Last time that Michigan State was here, almost the win, a 1-point loss. Time before that, it was the big win, the court storming. We already mentioned it was kind of the program changer for Brad Underwood. What do you think the crowd is going to be like tonight, Derek? Because I imagine for these guys who were lacking that energy against Maryland, Orange Crush might play a bigger role than normal in that tonight.
Yeah, they had a strong turnout as they walk in the building. I know that long line outside, bearing the cold. This is what you want. I mean, you got a nationally televised game. You got two ranked teams. You got a battle for first place in the Big Ten. And now your students are back, and you get your environment, you get that energy. And then if you are shorthanded, if you are missing Kofi, if you are missing Curbelo, I know you're probably hoping that it's at most one of those guys. You just don't know at this point, but trying to feed off that home energy is really going to be important. I think that it will be a great environment. And yeah, thinking back to that Io game and the court storm, you're not going to have that tonight if you beat Michigan State, but I mean, that Io guy's playing all right. He's doing okay.
He's doing okay.
But that was a moment. That was definitely an arrival moment for Illinois. And Illinois feels like they owe Michigan State. I mean, Brad Underwood's only 1-5 against them since he's taken over, and they've lost 3 straight. You think about last year losing in East Lansing and Io taking that shot. You feel like you owe this squad a little bit.
Yeah, it's going to be fun, and I'm excited for the moments tonight where it feels like the lid is going to pop off this place. I got a feeling that we're going to see a few of those. I think it should be very, very loud in here. All right, Derek, let's talk about what we think is going to happen in this game. As I look back, and they're headed back to the locker room, almost 5 o'clock here, and no Kofi Coburn, no Andre Curbelo yet. Take that as you will. Last week, when Andre Curbelo came back here, when Purdue was in town, he was out before, and you and Brett got to see him warming up here on the Your Illini Nation pregame show. Not the case today. No Kofi yet so far. I'm not saying that says anything, but I don't know. I don't like where that's trending personally. But let's talk about what you expect as we get into the slow jams now and what's going to happen in this one, because I think this one can go so many different ways, but without Kofi, it's going to hurt for Illinois.
We don't have to yell at each other anymore.
That's right. We can calm down a little bit. I can talk with my quieter voice. You can hear me pretty easily.
I can. I know what you're saying. But it reminds you a little bit, you think back to the Michigan game, we're waiting for Hunter Dickinson to come out.
That's right.
He's not there, and you start to get a little worried. Not that Kofi couldn't make a late arrival, but I think if you have him, and I kind of handicapped this game as I broke it down and thought of if Kofi was going to go, and I think that in a big spot that you need to win, you got a home crowd, and I think that Illinois would be able to pull that out in a close one. Now you look at the spread. We were talking about it off camera before we started this thing. It was 5 or 4.5 or whatever. I mean, that's a spread that says, I'm not saying that Vegas knows anything. I'm not saying that they don't, because they do a lot of times.
They do, yeah.
That's a spread made for Kofi to play. That will change if he's not in action tonight. But I would have Illinois 73-70 if he plays. If he doesn't play, I just don't think you have enough inside. I think you got to make a ton of threes. And I just don't think Michigan State, who has the #1 defense in the Big Ten, will be forced to defend that paint as much, especially if Kofi's not there. And really, Andre takes away another guy that's going to get in that lane. So it could get ugly if both those guys are out, in my opinion. I think if we saw Michigan State win by 8-10 points, if it was more, it wouldn't surprise me. That would be a really tough spot for Illinois.
It is a weird line to put at 5 in Illinois' favor, thinking that 2 of their biggest names, Andre Curbelo, Kofi Coburn, we don't know their statuses for tonight. We haven't seen them yet so far, so it'll be interesting to see how quick that is going to go. I mean, what are some of your just last thoughts as, we're getting ready here? Michigan State probably wants this one just as bad. These two teams had some fights. I'm not talking about physical fights. I'm talking about fights on the almost physical fights, right, actually. Yeah. I'm talking about on the court. Seems like every time these two teams play, sparks are flying in one way or another.
Yeah, they definitely are. I mean, Tom Izzo's been around this league a long time. I know he has a lot of respect for Illinois and the battles that he's had in this building. But, yeah, especially now that you have the recency between the players, the recent history of these guys, they know it's going to be a physical battle. And I think similar to, I know Michigan didn't ultimately win that game here in Champaign. If Illinois is that shorthanded and missing their big guy, I think the way that Michigan stayed in that game was just playing harder than the opponent, wanting it more than Illinois did, defensively having incredible intensity. I think that Illinois would need that. I think you need that in general, especially for a Michigan State team that's feeling really good about themselves, going to Wisconsin and getting a win really in dominant fashion, and things are really clicking for them. They already got as many wins this year as they did last year. They got 15. They had 15 last year. So they're in a different spot. I think that it's easy for Illini fans maybe to think Illinois natives have heard us in the past. Max Christie won, Malik Hall too. Those guys, and they are really key to this matchup, so being able to contain them. But really, Brad called his team out for not having a fight against Maryland. Regardless of who walks out that tunnel when it's about time to play, Illinois will have to respond and have a lot of fight against one of the teams that's, ever since Izzo's been here, known as one of the most physical, tough, rebounding teams in the league, and Illinois is going to be up for the challenge.
We haven't even talked about the conference implications yet either of the outcome of this game. The winner takes first place in the Big Ten, and if Illinois loses this one, they fall then a game and a half back from Michigan State. So if Illinois wants to keep a hold of their destiny in the conference, they have to have this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And you still look at, you got to go to East Lansing, you got to go to Purdue, you got to go to Indiana, you got to go to Michigan. I mean, this is a big game. You got Wisconsin coming in this building later this month. This is a big opportunity to stay at the top of the league. Really, you'd be in sole possession of first place. Well, you just have a tiebreaker over Michigan State because you both be 7-2. But you would put yourself
6-2. Michigan State would be. They're one game behind.
They're 6-1 and Illinois 6-2.
So yeah.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Michigan State would be 6-2.
Math,
I can do math.
Math on the fly. It's a two-man job, I swear.
That's right.
But yeah. Sole possession of first place at Northwestern this weekend. And really, as we talked about at the very beginning, a quad one win. You only have one of those on your resume right now. You could use a really marquee win on your resume.
Lot to play for. I know you kind of talked about your score prediction, what it would be if Kofi's playing versus what it's not. I'm going to have you lock it in right now. You can only choose one. I don't know if you chose two and the Illini Inquirer story, but for this, the pregame show, I'm going to make you choose one. What do you think it's going to be?
All right, I'm discouraged by not seeing Kofi, so I'm going to assume now that he's not playing. And that being the case, I think Michigan State gets it done. I'll say they win. I had it 73-70 if he plays. If he doesn't play, I'll say Michigan State 73, and Illinois probably only scores in the 60s, probably 65.
I'm leaning, I think, the same direction as you. I'm also discouraged, having not seen an appearance from Kofi Cockburn yet. You'd think that he would be out here by now, and right now, at this point in time, they're usually not out here warming up. No one is. But in those warm-ups that were going on when we first got started, no sign of him, no sign of Curbelo as George Michael starts playing. I don't know. I think I'm in the same boat as you. I think I'm going to go Michigan State the winner. But if Kofi Cockburn plays, forget this. But we have to lock one in. I'm going to go with that he's not playing. That's just my guess. I'm going to go Michigan State 78, Illinois 64. I think it's going to be really tough to score on Michigan State. And I know Illinois fans are going to hate me. I'm sorry. I apologize.
They probably don't disagree with you if he's not out there.
Probably fair. We'll see. Still a lot to be told. We have to wait and see what's going on. So, Derek, to kind of end us here, what are some things people can read in the hour before tip now on Illini Inquirer?
I've got the full breakdown of the matchup, the scouting report of Michigan State. I know I broke it down as if Kofi was going to play, but I looked at certain things that would need to happen if he didn't. Joey wrote an article about Brad's comments on adjusting or what you're not going to adjust if Kofi is out, and trying to just kind of calm that storm while he is uncertain and up in the air with his status. And then Joey, Jeremy, and I will have all the post-game reaction, analysis, and everything, a podcast. Check out your guys' podcast as well.
Dueling podcasts.
You're right. I mean, two podcasts. You can never have enough Illini podcasts.
That's right.
IlliniInquirer.com.
All right, Derek. Thank you so much. Good to have you back here on Courtside We will have all the coverage after the game. The game coming up on ESPN main channel, right? The mothership, I believe.
Mothership.
Jason Benetti on the call. So for you White Sox fans, I'm sure you will like that. It should be a very fun one. Huge implications. Stick with us on social media as well. We'll have all the updates on Kofi Coburn when we know his status. He's at, what's your ad? Give it to us.
At DPiper247.
He'll have all the updates at WCIA3 Andy. Follow us on Twitter. We'll have the updates for you as well. Postgame 2 at WCIA3 Sports, our Facebook channel as well, WCIA.com, to hear from Brad Underwood there. We have about an hour until tip-off now. We'll leave you at that. We hope you enjoy the game.